The future of business is community. And you must talk with your community, not just broadcast at them. Now, you guys probably have heard me talk about that a lot. My name is Brian Fanzo, millennial keynote speaker. But oftentimes people are like, okay, Brian, I understand that nobody likes to be marketed to, nobody likes to be sold at, but what are some of the ways that we can talk with our community, not just at our community? And that's what I'm here to talk to you about that. So I'm going to give you 5 ways. That's right, 5 ways that you can focus on talking with your community, not just broadcasting at them. And so this is, a little bit about wordplay, a little bit about the strategy that goes into what you're presenting, how you're putting yourself out there. But it also goes into a little bit about what your mentality about this digital world. And I will challenge everyone, every business, every walk of life, that every business is in the business of trust. And by talking with people, that's how you build that trust, no different than when we do offline. So tip number 1 is we need to start using we and words like us rather than talking about you or them. And what I mean by that is, when you're describing a problem, you say, we have that problem. And I do this a lot on my podcast. I will say, one of the struggles I know us as entrepreneurs oftentimes have is that we struggle prioritizing our day, and sometimes we feel alone. And if you notice, I said the word us. The difference between that is saying, the problem with what you entrepreneurs often have is that, entrepreneurs like you guys, you struggle with your prioritization. And the difference there is it is very direct, and I'm broadcasting at, and I'm telling people that what they are. And no one likes being told what to do. And really, no one likes being told what's wrong with them. But if you make them feel inclusive, make them feel like, hey, you feel their pain, not only is your message more relatable, but it's how you talk with them. You make them feel a part of it. And I talk about that a lot. When I say, I use Instagram stories and Facebook Live, and I always say, guys, I'm gonna bring you on a journey with me. Come with me in here. It's saying, hey, I'm bringing you along with me. So using words like we and us and together, those are great ways to really shrink that distance and talk with your community. The second one is asking your community questions. I get this all the time. It's like, Brian, I don't know what my community wants, or I don't know where I should be, what social networks I should be on, or how I should making all these things happen. And I often tell people, well, have you asked your community? And then here's a big piece of this ask, and this is still in that same model, is we have to ask people for what they want. We have to be willing to listen to their answers. But this is probably the most important of this. If you're asking people questions and you're listening, you have to acknowledge that you're listening. Oftentimes, more often than not, if people, if you're asking for feedback or people are giving you feedback, they don't want you, you don't need to know the answer. You don't even need to do exactly what they're telling you. But what you do need to do is acknowledge that you are listening. The amount of times, if you really want to tell people that, hey, I'm talking with you, say, hey, I love all this feedback, and don't be afraid, to call out comments or even, comment back. Oftentimes what I will do, especially on live videos, is I will reference a previous video, or I'll reference a client or a customer. And what that does is it makes people feel inclusive. Because here's the crazy part is oftentimes we ask people questions, we listen, but we don't even tell them that we were listening. And so for me as the consumer, I'm like, well, they asked for my opinion. They didn't take my opinion. And I don't even know if they listened. So why am I going to give my opinion a second time? So not only is it important to ask and foster those comments and conversation, but don't forget to acknowledge that you hear them. You acknowledge that you're listening to their comments, their questions, and their concerns. So that's number 2. Ask, listen, and acknowledge that you hear them. Number 3 is celebrate others. One of the things that I talk a lot about is that perfection is a fairy tale, and we don't believe anyone knows everything. And this is kind of a pet peeve of mine, but if you're using someone else's quote, or maybe, here you go, if you're, bringing up one of your favorite books or something that you're talking about, don't be afraid to celebrate the fact that you got this from someone else and that you're not trying to say that you know everything. The old days of being afraid to admit that you learned something or you connected with somebody else are done. It's no longer about what you know, but it's your ability to be not only a facilitator of information, but a connector. So don't be afraid to celebrate others. That includes collaboration. You'll oftentimes hear me on my podcast, on my videos, on my shows, and even in content that I'm creating for brands, I will reference other creators. I will reference other projects that I'm working on because it shows that inclusivity. It allows people to come in, but it's also important to celebrate other people because that kind of allows people to realize that you're not talking at them, you're talking with them, and you're also bringing other people in the journey with you. So number 3 is don't be afraid to celebrate. Number 4 of the top 5 ways that you can talk with your community, not just at your community. Number 4 is exclusivity. Don't be afraid to kind of allow people to say, hey, I was in this Facebook group, or all of you guys that are listening, and this to me is a big one, I customize my videos. And so one of the things that I've found from a lot of people, I do a LinkedIn video series where I'm creating videos just for LinkedIn. And when I start the video, I say, what's up, LinkedIn? Thanks for jumping into this video. Here are my thoughts. That little bit of exclusivity, that personalization, it allows people to realize like, hey, he's creating this content just for me on LinkedIn. Or he's creating this content just for me, his tribe, his community, his connectors. And that exclusive, we all want to be a part of something. And when you create content and you talk with people, then you make them feel a part of it, make them feel, as part of a, private community. Or, hey, FOMO fans listeners, which is my podcast, thanks so much for tuning in. That hey, I'm a FOMO fans listener. Or, hey, I'm part of that tribe. Or, hey, I'm part of that community. And so exclusivity is extremely important. I can't underestimate or really undervalue the importance of making people feel included by highlighting and personalizing that message, that content, that conversation. And number 5 of the 5 ways that you guys can talk with your community are nonverbal cues. Things by simply liking a tweet. Things by commenting on other people's Instagram posts. I've said this for a long time. The field of dreams marketing is over. If you expect people to come to your content only and comment on your stuff and go to your website and care about your stuff, how many times do you want it, when someone tells you, you must go to my website to fill out that form, how excited are you to do that? Not often the case. And so if you want to let your community know that, hey, I'm listening, hey, that I'm part of this, you have to use your digital nonverbal cues. As you can see, in this video, I use my hands when I'm talking. I move in and out to the video. You can see my eyes. That's why my hat is on backwards. I also stress the lighting, so this is a very valuable. You can see my brainstorming in the background. These are all nonverbal cues that we use in video. Well, there are non-verbal cues in the digital world. Simple things like, hey, reply to this tweet, and I will reply to everybody that does it. Or, hey, anybody that comments on this blog post, I will make sure that I comment. It's that ability of how do you give your nonverbal cues, because this is something I want everybody to remember, and this is a great way to wrap a nice little bow on this video, is that every action you take online is an action that tells your story. It's a brick in the platform. So every group you belong to, every comment you make on a LinkedIn post of somebody else, every piece of content you share is an element of you telling your story. Therefore, your nonverbal cues that say, hey, if you want to talk with people, talking with your audience, talking with your community is just as much listening as it is talking. And listening online is more than just watching if you watch someone's video, make sure you comment on their video. Make sure you comment on their post. Make sure you celebrate them. And when you comment, don't talk about yourself, celebrate the other people, because the great thing about this concept of talking with your community, not just at your community, is that you have to listen and care about them just as much as you want them to care about you and your conversation. So to recap, the 5 ways that you can be better at talking with your community, not talking at them. It's no longer about a billboard. The 5 ways are using words. The first one is using words like we and us and together and bringing people on the journey. Number 2 is you must ask, you must listen, and you must acknowledge that you are listening to people when you ask for comments. Number 3, celebrate your community, celebrate others, celebrate those that you are collaborating with. Let those people shine with you. Number 4 is exclusivity and personalization. Make sure that your content, people feel like, wow, they made this content just for me, because that's that connection that feels like you're talking with me. And number 5 is those nonverbal cues in the digital world, online, in video. Make sure that you are connecting with people. The magic is that Community is the future of business. You must be talking with your community, not at them. My name is Brian Fanzo, iSocial Fans. Cheers.